In my opinion, the most important thing to do early on in someone's program, if they're in pain or trying to improve their mobility, is decrease tone and tension within the body. Today I'm going to get into one of my favorite ways we can do that, and this is a really good follow-up video to my previous video on chronic pain. So if you're dealing with chronic issues, this can be a really good consideration for that. As I mentioned in that video, a lot of people come into my gym with a lot of tightness and restriction, and what that's really often paired with and representative of is a sympathetic nervous system. This is someone that's biased towards a fight or flight state. So the more fight or flight someone is, the more chronically tight they tend to be, and the more anxious they tend to be, the more short and shallow their breathing pattern tends to be. A lot of the traditional interventions we know of that help people feel better or are meant to help people feel better, like stretching and foam rolling, are really just there to create a window of opportunity or very temporary relief of a certain symptom. What we're really doing is just taking tone somewhere out of the body, and that way we have a short window of opportunity that could be somewhere between 2 and 10 or 15 minutes that will allow us to help re-educate the body and improve movement and create better movement options within the body. But this tends to be the missing link, right? Because people tend to just do some of that stuff and then they go back to whatever they were doing that caused them to be stiff in the first place. But that's a different story for a different day. I want to talk about in this video what we can do to potentially open up a lot of space and improve range of motion at the same time while decreasing tone. One of the best ways we can do that is rolling activities. And yes, that literally means rolling around on the ground. Let me help you understand what I mean by that. So if someone has an issue balancing on one leg, are you going to just have them balance on one leg as their first progression? No, you're going to have them probably hold on or tap on a wall to maintain that balance. You're going to add more references and make it easier for them to do that more effectively. Rolling is really the same thing. It's a precursor to becoming more upright and moving dynamically. Depending on what I notice is limited within this person, we can use certain rolls to help bias internal or external rotation-based measurements and see an instant improvement within those measurements. I go into more detail about this specifically within my biomechanics course, but I'm going to keep things pretty simple for the purposes of this video. So if I wanted to decompress certain areas of my body, I can use the floor as a constraint to do that. Let me show you what I mean by this. So if I were to lay on the ground and I were to just simply roll over to one side and then a little bit further than that, I would be passing through different phases of gait, more internal or external rotation depending on where I am. As I begin to lift up right here and go over on my side, once I'm laying on my side, that is a position of mid-stance and internal rotation. Internal rotation of the hips is this and this. So if I am going to roll over onto my side and the floor and the ground is right here, that is going to push my pelvis and my femur into an internally rotated position. You can see how that works. But then as I start to bring that other side forward, what's going to happen is this top leg is now going to be ahead of my bottom leg. What that really represents is an early stance position of my pelvis. So I'm going to have this leg forward and ahead, and I'm going to have my top arm behind my bottom arm. So really all I'm representing right here is this action right here, right? This is just an early stance position where my pelvis is beginning to turn towards that right side. So to summarize, if I'm just on my side right here, that is a bias towards internal rotation. So I can maximize internal rotation if I spend more time in this position. If I were to roll my top leg ahead more, that would be more of an external rotation bias within my pelvis and within my femur. So as I roll that top leg forward, my femur is going to move out into external rotation like this. Now, if you don't take away anything from this video and you want to try these activities, remember this. The number one most important thing, no matter what, is that there is as little tension within the body as humanly possible as you go through these rolling activities. Because again, we're trying to decrease tone. So if you're tight and trying to roll through these things really aggressively, it's not going to work for you. I can promise you that. But if you can stay nice and relaxed and move through it fluidly and as slowly as you can, then that's generally going to be the best case scenario there. That's going to help you take tension out of the body and tone. So you can notice that we're really trying to get movement within the pelvis and within the joints. That's going to help the muscles around the pelvis and the joints contract and relax, elongate, and shorten as they need to as the joints move through these motions. But if we're tight, that's not going to be very possible. That's going to lock us in a position. So rolling is really about getting the hips to move and the shoulders to move rather than just trying to go after muscles. A really easy progression to this stuff would be to just lay on your side and move in and out of more of an internal to externally rotated position with a foam roller. All you're really doing is just leading with the knee and making sure that you're not going too far into back extension. So once you feel like your back is gonna arch and your ribs are gonna flare, you've gone too far. And then you just very slowly come back, about 5 seconds out, 5 seconds in. A way that you can bias internal rotation would be to do a same side connect roll. So you can put a foam roller in between your elbow and also your knee, and you can hold it there and you can roll onto your side, which will bias more internal rotation. What we want to do here to set up is we want to get something about the size of a yoga block that we can pin between our elbow and also our thigh of the side that is opposite that we're going to roll to. So because we are rolling to the left here, we have it between the right thigh and the right elbow. And when we're doing this, it should not feel like we have any sort of pinch within our hip flexor on this side, and it should be very comfortable for us to be able to hold this here. Just kind of hanging out. We shouldn't have to put a lot of pressure here, just kind of passively holding it there. If you don't have a yoga block or it's not comfortable for you, something you can do is just use another object as long as it's pretty light. The small foam roller would be a good choice to use, and we can pin it right there and be in less hip flexion. So it's a little bit longer. If you're feeling a pinch here, you don't have to pull your leg as far back. But we're going to stick with the yoga block because it works really well for this activity. It's not too heavy and it's just about the right width of what we're looking for. So generally speaking, you want to have about a 90-degree bend at both the knee and at the hip right here, so right angles. And then what we're gonna do is get this other arm overhead enough so that it can be on the ground just chilling, hanging out, and it shouldn't have to hang there. It needs to be as far overhead as we can get it while still staying relaxed. Now what we need to focus on is keeping this leg down, and if we keep it down into the floor, it's gonna make the roll a lot easier. So now just inhale through the nose, roll until you can get this shin flush, and then exhale, and then come back to that starting position. If you're having a hard time keeping this thing wedged in between you, then what you could do is just simply put your forearm on it. That's totally fine. The whole point of this thing anyway is just to make sure that your leg is parallel with your humerus the entire time, your arm. So as we roll over, we can do the same thing. Inhale, boom, right there. Just make sure this shin gets flat, and then exhale through your mouth, back just like that. Now, a lot of people have really tight low backs, and you can use a gentle oscillating half roll like this, which will help you if you keep your knees up and your back flexed and relaxed. That will allow you to take tension out of your low back, and the ground will help sort of massage your vertebrae in your back, which can really help take tension out of that area as well. It's important to keep in mind though with that window is that it is going to eventually close unless we do something to help own that space. So drills from my programs like my beginner body restoration program or my shoulder health program can be a really good way for you to help own this new range of motion and space you're opening up. As it relates to the upper body, we can also help decompress the rib cage and the muscles that get tight back here by doing something where we just lay on our side and just do a gentle oscillating half roll with the upper body. So what we can do is just have our arms reach out in front of us and just gently reaching the top arm forward, which is gonna turn us towards that down side. From a back view, because we're reaching both arms and protracting, the scaps are moving away from the spine. So as we push these ribs back, that's going to help further open up the space between the scapula and the spine to help decompress this area, and we'll breathe into it and really get opening of that space. To set up for this, we've got a little Airex pad underneath the head to keep the cervical spine neutral so we're not side bent to one side or the other. And then we're just gonna be in this 90-90 position. We have a 90-degree bend at both the knees and the hips. So to start, we have our hands straight out from our shoulders at shoulder height. We're just gonna do a very, very slight tuck of the hips, just very mild. So what we'll do is start with the top hand slightly behind the bottom hand there. And it doesn't need to be much, maybe just mid-palm or slightly below that. And what we're gonna do is start with an inhale through the nose, just very gentle, but full. Exhale, and then reach until we feel the slightest bit of discomfort at all. And that might not be very far for you, it's very individual. And then we're gonna inhale. And as we exhale, we need to make sure that we're not pulling our scap back first. We want to lead with the rib cage back. So the ribs back here should lead the show, and the scap will naturally come because the ribs are being pulled back. And then we're just going to go to that starting orientation and then inhale here, exhale, go again. And what's really cool, depending on whether you are a wide or a narrow infrasternal angle, meaning this angle right here, which can be wide or more narrow, I have a full detail on that I will link above here, and you can check that out. But if you're familiar with it and you know what your ISA is, you can use this type of roll just with a subtle difference to get yourself some really nice range of motion changes and decompress your body in the areas that you need to. And depending on the presentation of your infrasternal angle and your type, it's going to be slightly different how you do it. But regardless, we're going to start in a hook lying position with our feet flat and knees slightly bent. If you're a wide infrasternal angle, such as myself, I would start with my hands crossed like this, and if I'm going left, I'm going to have my left hand on top of my right hand. I'm going to cross them across the top of the chest, just below the neck, keeping our forearms against our body. Not squeezing super hard, just gently keeping them there actively. And then if you're a narrow infrasternal angle, it would be the inverse. So you would have your hand on the bottom of the side you're rolling to. So rolling left arm is on the bottom underneath the right hand. So Trevor's a narrow ISA, so he's going to start with his left hand underneath his right because he's going to be rolling left. Now we're just going to gently initiate the roll with the lower body rolling mostly with the upper body, and he's going to reach a natural stopping point. Just make sure that this top leg, shin, is flush right here, and it's ahead of this back leg, which is flush with the ground. And he's just going to keep his head flat, and as he takes deep breaths in through his nose, out through his mouth, staying really relaxed, he's going to melt closer to the floor, and it'll happen very naturally. Don't force it. It'll happen naturally because of your breath cycle. The most common mistake in this is people will lose their elbows close to their sides, so as they roll, the elbows are going to move away, and we're not going to be getting the right positioning we're looking for here. So make sure that you're not jamming them close to the ribs, just keep them there as passively as you can, but still keeping them as active as you need to close to your sides. And the last thing to keep in mind is make sure when you do roll, you're rolling mostly together. But then when we get to the end position, we need to have this top leg ahead of the bottom leg. Sometimes people end up here. You gotta make sure this shin is flat right here. So to summarize, rolling exercises similar to foam rolling or stretching are there to create a window of opportunity. However, we can get a little bit more specific range of motion improvements if we know what we're looking for and how to do it. If you spend more time on your side, you'll be biasing internal rotation. If you spend more time rolling the top hip forward, that will be more of an external rotation bias. Make sure to follow these exercises up with things that are going to help you more actively and dynamically control that internal or external rotation with muscles. And I have plenty of content on my channel which helps discuss that.